so many women talk to me about an exit and they wonder how I've been able to do all this without an exit.
Right.
And the answer is I make a lot of fucking money.
Right.
And if you just make a lot of fucking money, you can do whatever you want.
Walking down the street, thinking about her exit, breaking down the steps so every founder gets it. She's the exit whisperer, she's opening the door. It started with a whisper, now that whisper's gonna roar. She just sold her company, and here you get the real story. Shh, you could be next. Walking down the street, thinking about her exit.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Exit Whisper. I am your host, Carrie Kerpen, and today we have like a real business mogul on this show. And I know I talked about in this season how I am sort of expanding beyond just women who've exited. This is a woman who has built her fortune through multiple acquisitions, which she's held. She's actually not sold one of them. She's built a family office brick by brick, okay? You are going to freak out when you hear her story. Hart was building and riding up the corporate ladder and going along, and all of a sudden a divorce shook her to her core, and she ended up launching her own marketing agency. From there, she completed her first acquisition of a business that fueled her, a dance studio. And then she went on to make 10 more acquisitions. Here's what's crazy. They were all cash flowed entirely by herself. Not even just like not raising funds, no debt, you guys. She talks about how she did it. And one of the amazing things that she also did was talk about her new system called Cashflow 2.0, which you should check out. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, I can't even tell you what you're going to get out of this episode, because she talks about sort of treating the businesses that you build like the same way you would invest in the market, which is diversification. It's a really simple unlock that totally could transform things for me in my own business. When I think about this, she was just awesome. And she does that through a manual and some coaching she does. It's Cashflow 2.0. It's awesome. And this business also made me think about one of our sponsors, which is Wealth Thrive. So Wealth Thrive are tax strategists, and they talk about things that you can do to help make sure that you keep the money in your pocket that you earn. And I was thinking about how the two link together, because KK is all about building without borrowing. And in order to do that, you have to have a smart tax strategy. So also check out Wealth Thrive, okay? Because they're really, really great. They're one of our sponsors this season. And I feel like KK, her story, and Wealth Thrive, they go hand in hand. Here's KK. KK, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
There's so much we have to talk about. So much. Can we start with your fostering journey before we go into anything else? Because I am just in awe of you and this decision and the way that you've built this family with this unbelievable entrepreneurial mindset as well, but from what I know about
Thank you.
Talk to me about this.
It's interesting because for me, I've always kind of doubled down on strengths and skills. And I never thought that that would turn into running what I call now a modern family office. And I think the real unlock for that was actually acquiring my kids. And so the way that started was I had amassed a pretty successful career in wealth early on, but there was always a missing link, and personal development was a big part of that. When I met my husband, we actually vibed on not having kids. And so that was a big change.
Wow.
We were for sure like a finger packed, like we're not doing this, right?
Okay.
And then because I had so much free time with running all the assets the way that I do, I started volunteering. I was a CASA volunteer, which is essentially like a fun aunt for kids in foster care.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget my second visit with my now kids. My daughter looked at me and said, "You should be my mom." And I was kind of broken. You know, I had not had that thought except for the first visit. I drove home and I remember feeling really freaked out is the only way I could explain it. And so by that second visit, and she said that, I kind of had the thought, like, what if this kid's right? Like, what if this is what I'm meant to do? And this sounds so hyperbolic. What a way to start. But I look back on that now. Now it's been about 3 years they've been with us, almost to the date. And I think about the way we've grown our family, the way we've grown our wealth, and the way we've created this modern family office ecosystem of which my kids sit at the decision-making table with us, and they decide how they deploy, their investment funds, and they decide how we move as a family. And it's completely changed my view of success.
I had to start with that. We have a long history of wealth creation and growth with you and acquisitions. But when you tell that story, it's sort of like, you know how when you're building a business in a lot of ways to sell, you start with the end in mind?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, that part of the end is so moving. And the fact that you had a pinky promise pact of no kids is my favorite part. So, okay, let's go back before this. How did you get into the space where you were going to build and acquire businesses?
Quite accidentally. I was a corporate girly. I was a first generation American, and we had immigrated here at a very, very young age. And so I saw my mom transition careers. So I always say shift happens, and shift has happened a lot for me. It looks very good now, and it's been a glow up. But the starting point was really seeing my mom go from a very difficult financial situation, a personal situation where she had to get divorced and flee our country of origin, and then brought 3 girls on her own to America. Immigrated here, went through the naturalization process. And then I just remember seeing my mom continue to double down on her skills and to be fiscally conservative. So as a corporate girly, I had that idea 20-something years ago that was like, okay, I got the skill and the education. Now I'm going to retire out at a company.
Right.
Which, plot twist, obviously did not happen.
Did not happen in the way that we originally thought. No. But you probably were very focused then. I would imagine going into that corporate space from your upbringing was probably thinking about security.
100%.
I mean, if you're going to say like, I'm going to go there and I'm going to have this lifelong career, I'm going to get my golden watch and I'm going to retire and it's going to be great.
That's right.
What shifted for you?
Yeah, boy, you're such a great friend. You caught it right away. It's stability.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. And that was maybe my first love of business, was the idea that I could be a part of these massive multinational organizations. And my first job out of college was Lilly, which is now like the leader in GLP-1s.
Yes.
And I think when that disrupted was also because of stability. In my first couple of years, I got promoted several times. And so I financially started scaling very quickly. And there was always excess at the end of the year. But the last year I was there, they took away merit-based and performance-based increases and bonuses.
Okay.
I could not find the door fast enough.
I can imagine that even linking to your story too, because what you were taught as a child is that hard work begets reward.
That's right.
And so seeing that happen is so antithetical to your spirit and who you are. So you leave. So what happens?
So I lived for upward mobility.
Yep.
I went to a couple other companies, most of which were in-house consulting. So I kind of found very quickly, because I was trained in the field of behavioral science, when it really just first advented, there was a lot of need for this skill set. Sales, marketing, business development, B2B SaaS, enterprise companies, they wanted to learn the brain. How does it work? How do we change people's thinking? And this is what they did in big pharma. They trained me with military grade precision. So I always say I sold drugs, but then I sold legally, and then I sold devices, and then I sold biotechnology, and then very quickly found my love for the wellness industry, in that the cash-based side of wellness was really early. This is the early 2000s. And I saw an opportunity to be a little bit more enterprising, but I thought I'd be inside of businesses. So this is where I found acquisition. There was a gentleman who had sold and packaged about 200 dental clinics.
Okay.
And he sold them, made all the money, and wanted to do it again.
Okay.
Tried to hire me for like peanuts on the dollar.
Okay.
And looked up what I had been doing. And I just started kind of coming out and talking about investing, and corporate wellness at the time was kind of having a surge. And then obviously skills and strengths-based development. And he asked to hire me. I said very brazenly, "You can't afford me." And he said, "Well, I have an idea about what you want to do that maybe I'd be your first client on." And he really took a chance on me. And I learned mergers and acquisitions through doing it with him.
Okay. So this is so uniquely paralleled to a little bit of my journey, which was I had an aversion to sales. Like I thought that I could never be in sales. I grew up in corporate marketing, et cetera, until someone made it safe for me to do so. She was like, "I'll give you a draw against your commission. I know you're going to be great." And it was only because I had that ecosystem set up for me that I felt safe enough to go.
That's right.
And once I went, It was just over. And that's where I learned I could be an entrepreneur, because once you really know, once you know you have a skill set that you can do it on your own, I think there's no going back.
The genie cannot go back in the bottle.
So he brings you on, and are you partners? Is that how that works?
It's like a fractional, actually.
Okay, so he launched like your consulting business. Okay, so he hires you.
Yep.
So you now start this consulting business.
Yes, it's consulting,
Marketing.
running a marketing agency, but also advising founders on scale. So we did that for years. He packaged that group up again. And then I went through a really traumatic business or personal side of my life where I got married and divorced very young. So that stopped everything.
Did it stop the agency?
No, but it
kept
stopped
the agency, but it stopped your fire?
It stopped my stability again.
This
You already
all
nailed my
ties back.
three-put, correct. And so that made me wonder, well, hold on, there's a couple of things. I'd made a ton of money at this point. I had a prenup that I had to force to and make sure that it wasn't going to be challenged. And so coming out on the other side, I felt probably equal parts. This is interesting. I never thought of it this way. Survival guilt and also like, well, fuck it, let's go. Equal parts. But I leaned into fuck it, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's when I started acquiring businesses myself.
Okay. It's so interesting. Fuck it, let's go.
Technical saying.
I think if I'm describing my own story, often I come in the same space. When something is uprooted, there's nothing to do but fuck it, let's go, because what else are you going to do? So you have to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so you make this money. So now you're in a position where you're safe, but you're also uprooted because you've gone through this divorce and you're going through this divorce. You're protected in the divorce enough, but still it's destabilizing.
Yeah.
What's the first business you acquire?
The dance studios that I got my confidence back in.
Oh my God. So tell me all about this.
That was insane. I had really felt such compelling hurt and shame. I was in an abusive relationship, which was also really weird with my ego, and had really done a number on me. And I had started doing dance fitness and really got involved in the fitness industry as a way of kind of getting my groove back.
Yeah.
And I started looking for a business. This is so unglamorous. I Googled, how do you buy a business? Because I started thinking about that.
This is what I need, babe. You go through.
Yeah,
if somebody wants to do it. They
truly
Googled
did the
how
thing.
How to buy a business.
And I remember looking on a listing site that I now know is Biz Buy Sell. So that was my very first one, was like so junior league. And I looked at a business and I thought, this sounds so familiar. I guess I'll just hit the button. I will submit my own interest, which is normally you have to go through brokers and everything else. And when I did, I found out it was the studio that I had been building back my confidence with. And so the
studio you were dancing with was now
so
up
aligned.
For sale.
100%. It felt so aligned.
Did you know at that early stage in your series of acquisitions, which you go on to acquire many businesses, of course, but with that first one, did you know how to value it? Like, how did you figure out if it was the right price? How much were you willing to risk to go into this new world? Like, how did it work? Take me through that.
This is where you're so good. You're asking all the right questions here, because I would tell you there's a skill set that I think most people have inside of them. Part of my behavioral science training is to learn about strengths. And when you find someone's strengths, you help them double down on that. We usually think culturally it's the opposite. So you find everything you're not great at and you work on that.
And you try and improve it, but
but the greatest growth comes from your strengths.
Yes.
So that being said, I knew that I was really good at business. I was very good with money. No choice. Had to be.
Had to be.
And then thirdly, I think for me, I was very brazen about believing in myself, right? And so part of that came with, I'll knock on the door myself. I'll value it myself. And I had a skill set that I knew would help grow businesses like that, and has been obviously very successful for me ever since. So I took my skills and I took my strengths and I put capital behind it.
And how did you know how much capital? Like, were you working in your head like, okay, I know I'll have this many classes, people will pay this much, I can pay. Did you want it to cash flow like day one? What were you thinking in that process?
I love that you asked that, because I don't think I thought about that
probably
at
didn't
all.
know. Like, I would think like, okay, how quickly is it going to produce money? And oh my God, I'm so scared. But this is because I come from a crazy initial scarcity mindset always.
And I had that too. I'll tell you why I didn't. I had made a lot of money.
And so you were safe enough to try it.
I was so safe.
So you were like, I'm just going to try this.
I used my own cash. So what I started to do was think about money very differently.
Okay, tell me.
Started using it as a tool for lots of things. I had bought 2 pieces of real estate by then.
Okay.
And those were already doing very well. And then I had already amassed this massive cash burden is what I would think of it as. And so the tax man was always coming for me. So I thought very strategically about this. It was equal parts like when you're cash flowing businesses, especially with that first one being a marketing agency, agency life. But I had a very great stability in that agency. And I had a skill set that was still in such demand. So I kept thinking about this as like, what's the worst that can happen? I have the money. I'll use my cash, which I thought was a bargaining chip. And now I look back and I think I overpaid. And then thirdly, I think for me, it was more about what it meant purpose-wise than profit-wise. It looks really good now, looking back, but I loved the industry. I was very eager and excited to go all in on wellness. And I think that drove a lot of my interest more than the tactical nuts and bolts. Now, again, having a natural skill set for money management meant I could look at what she had done, 2x revenue for the prior years was what I kind of used as my valuation.
Yep.
Which was not unfair.
No.
But I would have made back my money even faster, which I did in about 3 years.
Okay.
Which is wild because after that was pure profit. And so I would say one of the things I wish I thought more about was valuation, but I do that now.
I mean, you were just learning, and this was something that was personally meaningful to you. And the other thing that I love, that I hope more of the women who are listening now, who maybe run agencies or run a service-based business, realize is that you can use that cash flow, which can be highly, highly lucrative, and just continue to build. Like, so many women are focused on, when I have this business and I get it to exit, then I'll have a windfall. But if you make the business profitable, you can have a windfall right now to buy some more and build.
So that's my story.
What you did.
Yeah.
So, okay. So how many businesses over time have you acquired?
So I just did my 10th.
Okay.
And what I've learned about that, I've advised on over 300 million in assets that did an exit. So between acquiring, investing, and of course advising and mentoring, I think the interesting thing that you just said that really hits my heart is that we've not thought strategically about our assets even when we have them as women. Whereas when I created my family office originally, it was just me and my dog Caramel. And that felt very lonely, right? It was very strategic financially, but it felt personally very daunting. And then as I grew and I met my husband, and of course now with our kids, so now it's me, my husband, Caramel Frappuccino, and then 2 adopted kids, our investment community has grown, but it's also given us a different scope of what success looks like. So I think what I would want someone to think about is not just leveraging capital, but skill. And thinking about an ecosystem that you're really creating instead of just one thing that you're known for. So many women talk to me about an exit and they wonder how I've been able to do all this without an exit.
Right.
And the answer is I make a lot of money.
Right.
And if you just make a lot of money, you can do whatever you want. I now call it cash flow 2.0, and there's like a whole process around it that I advise. But there are multiple ways to be successful, 2 of which are internal, 2 of which are external. That exit is the one everyone likes to talk about. But every single year, I trip every wire but that, and I see more money, more assets, but more importantly, more legacy. And that's the thing I chase now.
So when somebody, well, I have so many questions, but I have to go into that last thing you just said about making money. When somebody is listening to you and they're like, oh my God, she has this skill set. She knows how to make a lot of money, right? Pardon my French. Pardon my French. When somebody wants to make a lot of money, what's the first thing you advise them to do?
Upskill. Which is the hardest thing to say because I know, I came from very little, and education, especially what I grew up in, was like the unlock, which now is a bit in flux. But I'll tell you, every 5 to 7 years, Carrie, I have shifted in some way my skill, not just my capital, my strengths. And some years that's personal, some years that's professional. But I would say I was a very odd young lady. I exited college at 20. I had done every career test possible prior to that to figure out what were the skill sets I wanted to, this is 19, 20 years old. And so I was very tactical about what I wanted to learn and what I wanted to be. And back then, if you remember, there were years where a statistician was the #1 job, mathematician, that kind of stuff. And then very closely kind of around that is the idea of what we now know as data science and behavioral science and intelligence and analytics. So that's kind of how I got here. So you
looked at what was on the up.
Absolutely.
And you matched that with your greats, whatever your skill was, that your strength, and you match those together.
Natural skill sets can still be learned.
How did you go from I'm going to buy a dance studio to officially like, I have a family office and this is who I am now. And this is how I evaluate businesses to buy. Like how did that arc happen?
You're going to be very surprised at the answer.
I'm ready.
It has nothing to do with money. It has to do with my heart. I had such a change getting married with my forever husband and then growing our family this way. I was already work optional when I met him. So it's also kind of a weird story, right? Because as a woman, usually our wealth comes from our home, our stocks, and usually our partnerships.
Yes.
But I'd had all that before. And so it felt very empty, actually. That was not the version of success that I wanted. And being able to work so hard and feel so alone, and then having this other kind of shift in my life, I looked at a different vision of success. And that's when I realized, well, first of all, I had women telling me, what you're doing is a family office. And then secondly, the assets kept growing. And so with time, with doing the same thing for 20 something years, you get better. I think right now there's like shiny object syndrome in the female founder community.
Yeah.
It's like we chase the next thing or we chase the exit. But actually what concerns me is that we're not masters of our trade anymore. And so upskilling doesn't mean you shift to the next skill. It means you find ways to layer. And that's what that family office concept has created for me. I've been very lucky that I've made it all work, but there have been lots of shifts along the way.
When you have money in lots of different places, lots of different businesses, it's all over your it's now a portfolio, right? And you're living this portfolio life. How do you think about allocation? Like how much of it should be in the businesses? How much of it should be invested? What's your personal philosophy?
Yay. Thank you for asking that. I feel like business owners get this wrong. We flip our balance sheet because we kind of lead with business, whereas most people hold their wealth in stocks and retirement funds that they can't touch, right? Well, they can touch it more now.
Right.
And then also real estate, usually personal real estate. So
More illiquid.
What we realized is our balance sheet needed to be completely inverse of that. And that's when I started really creating what I now know as Cash Flow 2.0, which is like, how do you take an asset management approach to business?
Okay, talk to me about that.
Diversification.
Yeah.
So we're told as women, and especially as women entrepreneurs, that you find this one thing and you like put everything into it because it's your baby. And then you grow your baby. And then hopefully you give your baby away. It gets weird. And it works out for you financially. But until then, you're a sacrificial lamb and you take very little.
And you're working and you're schwitzing and you're exhausted and you're the whole thing.
That's it. Indentured servitude. And so that is the original approach to entrepreneurship that most women lean into. What I saw in diversification is that there was so much stability. We're going to keep going back to stability in having assets of different kinds and about 15 to 20 different income streams, even today. And the reason for that is different industries have different highs and lows. B2B businesses have a different sell cycle than B2C businesses. You know this. And so there's really a benefit when you think about rebalancing with regards to having a portfolio versus this one industry or this one thing. I think I'm better because I'm proudly multidisciplinary.
So you would rather see, I'm fascinated by Cash Flow 2.0, you would rather see money invested across several different businesses because you're oh my God, I totally get it. You're taking the asset management approach of what you would do in the market.
You got it.
You're putting it into businesses, all of the businesses cash flow.
And
you have
operational efficiency. So there's the last piece of the puzzle that people don't think about. You have to be, my background is Lean Six Sigma, which is like 1% better, change for the best, ongoing change. So when I added that to the diversification, what I ended up finding is there had to be this arc of essentially being a great operator, being an efficient operator, and being someone that can run a business versus just having everybody else do everything for you. That's the trifecta.
Man, how much money do you need to be able to start even just thinking like this?
Yay. Oh yeah. I hadn't thought about this for a very long time. I'm so glad you asked that.
Because you built a lot through, I'm sure, your corporate career prior and then your marketing agency together provided a portfolio that gave you enough safety to start to go into this. When do you start? Like how far, maybe you've started a business, how far in your business do you go before you start doing this? And how do you not lose focus?
Yeah.
Like, that's really where I want to think.
It's hard. A lot of women ask me this and I always tell them you can start where you are.
Yeah.
But where you are has to layer in some of these principles.
Yeah.
So the first I would say is for having a really large cash position.
Yeah.
Actually, my last asset that I bought, Ghost Democracy, I bought for under $1 million cash, but it had been incubated for about 18 million. And cash was the reason they chose me for the deal. I wasn't the highest deal. I wasn't the best. So being fiscally conservative, I think
Having
is the
cash on
first
hand.
place. Having
Have cash on
100% free
hand.
cash flow. Anyone who tells you differently is usually trying to get you into debt so that they can make that assets under management philosophy on you. But that would be one. I would say the second that really hits home for me is the concept of knowing what you want to do long term. And that took me a while longer. So it's like understanding, am I a real estate mogul? Am I a acquisition girly? You do have to have some level of direction, but then in between all of that are the different layers of asset management that you do essentially yourself.
You guys, when I hear all of this about cash flowing these businesses and how to do it without bringing on debt or taking on investors, I immediately think about smart tax strategy. And there are no smarter tax strategists than WealthThrive, okay? WealthThrive is one of my newest partners. I'm obsessed with them. I've done it for myself. They do an analysis of your entire income, of what you're working on, of what you're building towards, and making sure that you are both following the rules but receiving the most advantageous tax benefits, right? We want to keep as much of our money in our pockets as possible so that we can build like KK is building in this episode. I can't think of a more perfect link, and I'm so excited for you guys to check out WealthThrive today. So how did you do the work to figure out what your investment thesis or your business thesis would be? We know you love wellness. What did you do to really build that family office thesis, I would say?
We focus on something that's quite contrarian. We focus on the ideal client versus an industry. And that was actually accidental. I feel like I stumbled into being multidisciplinary because again, chasing stability means you take every client, you take every opportunity that comes your way, and you learn a lot very quickly. So what I found was, now I can tell you my thesis is fitness, beauty, health, wellness, the future of work, and the future of money. What most people don't realize is there's a big intersection between all of them, and that's the ideal client. Usually a woman, she's 25, 28 plus. She invests in herself, both personally and professionally. And what I noticed was, even from those first 4 assets, so I ended up kind of scaling up the wellness philosophy first. And then realizing that there were other assets that I could actually use the list for and use the client base for. Different ways we could use the physical spaces that we had. And so I started piecing together the family office through this concept of different ways to grow beyond the external. So it's like, can you monetize that client base with something else, a different service or offering? Can you add in a new client base where you're adding a share of wallet?
Less about the business, more about who the business reaches.
100%.
Give me the types of the businesses that you've acquired. So dance studio, what other types of businesses?
Dance studio, this one really shocks people. It was only $30,000, but it was a business that did virtual renderings and 3D photos for the real estate industry. And the reason that one matters is because there's a sales process and a project management process. That's something I had been doing in other businesses that really connected the dots. We own a construction company. That one does really well. It's really high profit. We build big buildings throughout the United States, usually in places like Las Vegas and hospitality and that kind of stuff. And then Ghost Democracy is our most recent. That's a skincare company that has about 6 or 7 SKUs and has clients all over the United States. And we acquired that one as it was a real doozy.
Have you ever offloaded one? Have you ever have you held them all, or have you?
Oh, we hold all of them.
You hold them all.
Yeah.
Have you ever had one that didn't meet the expectations that you wanted?
In diligence, but I'm very, because it's my money. I think this is where using other people's money looks really good on the outside.
Right.
It's a lot easier to invest other people's money because you have no skin in the game. I worked for every dollar, or my dog worked for every dollar that's inside of the business.
Yep.
And so I've missed more than I've actually gotten. And so it looks really good now, but you don't know how many things I missed out on. And so while we haven't seen a loss like that, I have missed tons of upside. I could name the companies. Like Spotify is probably one that I think about all the time. I was an early adopter. I was already a behaviorist on the B2B SaaS side. I saw what they were doing with the democratization of music at the time and music licensing. And I was so early on to using it because in the wellness industry, music was a big part of what was hard. We were downloading stuff illegally. And I mean, totally legally.
Right.
And what we realized was like, oh my gosh, there's an opportunity to curate a playlist and to use this platform. That was 2011, way before they went public, way before they had capital that they took on. But I didn't believe in myself back then. So I would see these opportunities, many of which, Canva was another one. I was a very early adopter too, having an agency.
Yep.
you'd see the writing on the wall, you'd use the tool, but I never connected the dots between, I understand this, it's fantastic, and I should go out there and try to make money off of it.
Yeah.
I just didn't believe in my skills at that time.
Well, you also have a very clear arc of acquiring for full control too. I mean, I hear a lot around controlling the environment in which you're in and the building. It just makes your whole story makes complete sense to me that you are building this empire that is controlled by what you want, when you want it, and you're not raising money to do it. You're doing it with your own cash flow. Yeah. Do you borrow though? Do you borrow ever? You don't even borrow?
No, I don't believe in debt.
Oh my God.
Not for me. And I'll tell you why, Carrie. I've met so many women, especially women, that take on the debt for an opportunity. And then I meet them way too late and things have not gone well.
Well, that's when you get a deal.
Yeah. But I don't see that as success.
It sucks.
It's a golden handcuff.
Yeah.
It looks good on the outside.
Yeah.
And sometimes these women are very notable. Sometimes they have big following. Sometimes they're what you would think of as very smart, intelligent people, but they put themselves in a position where now they're not in control and they don't get to have their assets together.
How do you look at valuations generally?
I would love them to be lower than they are now.
Right.
I try to take it industry by industry. So I would say, and you're better at this than I am, I look at what I can force in appreciation. I almost treat every deal, real estate's not a strength, mostly personal real estate, but they really appreciate it nicely. But I think of it almost like when you buy a fixer-upper and then you add something to make it better.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do that with businesses. So I value based on what can I do with the asset versus what did they do. I look at revenue and I look at profit. And for me, there has to be a path to profitability. So that wipes out most businesses. And the ones that I do about one deal a year if I'm lucky. And what I've found is if I can see that I can force appreciation, like what we did with Ghost Democracy, we made our money back in 3 months. That was a home run. I wish I could tell you it's all me. I think it's equal parts luck and hard thoughts about what we were going to do and then just working as fast as we can to get there.
Did you do it by getting into new retailers, opening new SKUs? Like it just from
operational
marketing?
efficiency. Private equity gets a really bad rap, but let me be clear about this. When I run my fund the way that I do, it kind of looks like private equity.
Right.
I come in, it's got to be profitable.
You have centralized operations.
I have completely operationalize the business, and then we add the layer of growth through the marketing arm.
Yeah.
So with them, they were running such a high level of margin and their burn was so out of control, they could not have operated anymore.
So you took in the operations and through the agency that you have, you took through the marketing and then you're able to make the money.
That's my ace in the hole.
Love it. Love it. I love it so much. What's your advice to buyers? And what's your advice to sellers?
I think for buyers, it's to know what you really want for yourself, actually, not from the asset. This last one I actually did with no understanding of how we would actually grow it other than what I thought we would do, which is operationalize it. But know yourself and know where you want to go with regards to your personal development. And I say this because I know a lot of ladies watch this. And the number one thing that I struggle with when I'm advising women in business is that at some point in their lives, their interpersonal needs and their family needs and their personal development leaves them stuck even when there's money in the bank. And so admittedly, my kids came at the end of the journey, not at the beginning. And that was also strategic. You'll find much of my story is either strategic, is intentional, and it's very proactive. Lots of missteps, but I try to always get to that next step with that strategy or that proactivity. And so a lot of times women, they build this fortress of their loving, and then they realize that something has to shift in their life and it can't go with the business. They can't grow inside of the business, or they have to take a hard pivot and it doesn't feel very good. So that would be a buyer sentiment that I wish more women really thought about. Like, am I thinking about growing my family in the next 5 years? Probably not the best idea to buy. Am I looking to have maybe a more portfolio-centered version of my wealth? And then it's time to start talking, right? With sellers, I mean, this is like an emboldened plea, but you got to sell based on what the business can do, not what you need from it.
Right.
It's like, I forgot what president it was, like, ask not what you can do for your country or what your country can do for you,
but what you can do for your country.
Like, please don't wait until you really need the money and there's a number you need to get to do a deal, because everything ends at that moment for me.
Yes.
That deal's on the cutting room floor.
Yes. You have to work backwards to make sure that you're actually valued at the amount that you want if you're going to go out and do that in the first place. I love that we started with the kids, and I love that we talked about ending with the kids and the full circle. One of the things that you told me before this interview was a little bit about how your daughter came to the table and said, hey, we need to buy a business. She said to her brother. Talk to me a little bit about how you instill entrepreneurial values in your kids.
This is going to sound really soft, I think is what they're calling it these days, but I'm a big proponent of family values. I think so much of my career, I was like the divorced, wealthy businesswoman. I don't think anybody ever saw this coming, but I really believe in family. I believe in that dominion. That's our word for the year. And so with that, we sit at dinner every single day as a family, and we have conversations about, we call it our highlights and our hard spots.
Yep.
And we come up with business ideas, whether we're going to acquire, whether we're looking at a business to invest in. And the kids are at that table for all of that. I guess I shouldn't be so surprised that after just a few years, they're thinking about their own assets and what they want out of life. And my daughter, she's got about, she had $10.84, but then she tripled that recently. And now she's really serious about making money on her money.
Wow.
Which is wild.
That is fantastic. All right, I'm going to end with a question that is probably a little more, I'll see how you answer it. It might be more emotional than having a fact-based answer, but I'm not sure. How much money do you think is enough?
I can tell you what I have, and it does feel like enough.
Tell me.
And I hope that somebody hears this and doesn't hear the big number, but they hear the heart behind it. So we run about $30 million assets under management. When I got to 10 million, I was like, psh, we're good. We were work optional.
Yes.
Everything from that actually comes from not needing the money.
Right.
I want women to get their assets together. I want families to not need the money so they can actually sow into the legacy, the generational growth, as I call it, of the business, of the family, and of everyone who's a part of it. And so I think the number is personal, but also tactical, shocking. And I think about this a lot. There's a phrase in the SaaS industry, we call it the burn, right? Which is like every month, how much are you burning? And the reason I don't believe in debt is that I really believe that the freedom of not having a burn is just so—
It's the best.
It's the life that I want for everyone. And the only way to get there is to have that number be as low as possible. I remember the first million and thinking, well, okay, I'll keep going. But that was enough in my head to realize that I'd be financially okay.
Yes, you'd be financially free if you needed to be. It's understanding like how much you spend now, how much you might be able to either cut down or scale up as you grow, whatever it is, and making sure you have enough to do that. It's really whatever I totally agree with you on burn. And I also agree with you about the benefits of financial freedom for all women.
I want it for everyone, and I want it to be applicable
for
them in their box.
Me too.
Like I would say living very underneath our means, even still now, it allows us so much more freedom to even think differently and act differently. And what most women think is that more is better. We've just been programmed to think about more materialism, I'm just going to be honest, right? More fancy stuff, the bigger house. And actually, I'm proudly a minimalist. So this is where I think we really think differently when we vibe on this idea of like less is more. And my whole career is based off of being lean and operational efficient. You can see how all the skill sets are compounding, so to speak, but it's also the thing that I will absolutely die on this hill. If we can live with less, we can do so much more.
If we can live with less, we can do so much more is going on a quote card, on a something in the world. KK, thank you so much for coming on the show. You are freaking incredible.
That was my mic drop. I appreciate it.
That was a mic drop. We have nothing left to say. That's it.